when we got into the last recession, I was just looking at hard numbers. What has gotten me the exact number of leads that I needed? Let's cut out the things that didn't. And we realized within a couple of years the impact it had on brand awareness and familiarity with our name. I think brand becomes even more important.
Yeah.
You do not want to let go of that just to cut budget, because brand is that thing that continually defines you.
Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to Go Live with Joshua Scott. This is episode number 19, coming at you live on Thursday, 1 p.m. East Coast time. Guys, I'm super excited today. I've got Xana Winans with Golden Proportions Marketing here with me. Say hello to everybody.
Hello, thank you for having me on. This is kind of awesome.
Oh my gosh, of course. And, I love, you have a marketing company, I have a marketing company, and, some people would go like, what? I know. But I know you think differently about it. I think differently about it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like what we all want right now is to serve the dental profession and what's best for them. And so, I appreciate you jumping on and talking with me today.
Absolutely.
Well, so Xana, a little bit about yourself. kind of where I wanted to start was just how all this got started. You founded and own a company called Golden Proportions Marketing. Have you always been in dentistry? Was this just a thought in the middle of the night that came to you? Like, how did it all get started?
So it's kind of an interesting story. I met my husband when he was in dental school, and we moved from Pittsburgh out to central Pennsylvania. And I did what I was always trained to do. I worked for other marketing agencies, advertising agencies in the area. But like a good wife, I was supportive of his practice when he did a scratch practice and did all of his marketing. And there was a short period of time right around like the end of 2000 when the agency I was working for went bankrupt. And I tell you what, it has been one of the best lessons looking at what they did wrong to make sure I never do those things in my company. And so I had about a 3-month gig trying to be a stay-at-home mom, thinking that was like a signal from the universe that I was supposed to be home with my kids.
Yeah.
I didn't hear what the universe was saying, which was, no, start your own thing because you're a terrible stay-at-home mom. Even my children admit that.
Yeah.
So my husband was actually at the time, he was a student at the Las Vegas Institute for Advanced Dental Studies. And one of the consultants out there that had seen the work I was doing for him really liked it, mentioned it on the LVI forum back when there were just little individual email forums. And sitting at dinner one night, I got 2 phone calls right in the middle of dinner from 2 different doctors saying, hey, can you do this for me? And that was the lightning flash I needed. Literally the next morning, I went out, I bought a laptop, I got a phone line, I started Golden Proportions Marketing in some spare offices in my husband's office, and it's just done nothing but grow since then. So total serendipity.
Yeah, that's awesome. How'd you come up with the name?
Well, I blame that on LVI as well. So that was the era of cosmetic dentistry. When I started, because I'm a little bit older than you, there were like 5 dental marketing companies, literally. Yeah. I could name them. And cosmetic dentistry was huge. It was part of what was fueling the idea of dental marketing because Extreme Makeover was on, and all these, people had finally started to relax restrictions. So within cosmetic dentistry, there is this concept of the golden proportions, which is the perfect proportions, height, width, etc., to get a beautiful, aesthetically pleasing smile. Now, trust me, if I could go back in time, 19 plus years, I would pick a name that wasn't so long to pronounce when we answer the phone.
Or like email addresses.
Oh, seriously, website, exactly. Yeah. But hindsight and all that.
Yeah. Was okay. So you launched into that kind of the heyday of the cosmetic, trend going on. Did that shape a lot of your approach to marketing, maybe even stylistically, aesthetically?
Definitely. And I think it was part of the reason we were successful.
Okay.
We always had an eye for just kind of a higher end look. And for cosmetic dentistry patients, you needed to attract people who had some spare income. But the biggest thing that I think it shaped for us was the fact that all of cosmetic dentistry was fee for service. So we were not working with practices that had tons of insurance and that were high volume. We were really going after these doctors who had a passion for independent dentistry. Now, we've expanded over the years. Obviously, the whole world economy shifted in the last recession, but it's definitely where we got our feet wet and something we're still really passionate about today. Yeah.
I was wondering if that was kind of an underlying value there. How then, okay, so you kind of launch into that with higher end fee for service practices. How did your approach to marketing change then over time did you just naturally start attracting other practices and kind of adjust, or have you always kind of taken that high aesthetic value into everything you do?
Our approach hasn't really changed in terms of how we develop the marketing that we do. We've always been a full service agency, always been strategic planners, that's the foundation of everything. Okay. I think the lessons that we learned along the way were more about watching the consumer behavior. And there was such a monumental shift after the recession of people had to get comfortable with the idea of putting offers in some of their marketing, or being a little more out there with how aggressive they were in how public their presence was. So I think for us, that's what shifted, is we were able to push the envelope a little bit for people, and it just didn't have to be high-end aesthetic. We could make a little noise for them to get some attention.
Yeah. And this whole idea of full service, did you know that from day one, or was it you kind of did a couple things well and then you've built it over time? And are you in traditional media, print, and that type of stuff too?
So good question. The world of dentistry, again, back when I started with these 5 other dental marketing companies, there was a direct mail company, there was a website company, but I came from other marketing companies and agencies. And I always tell people, never in a million years would I go pitch Ford or Pepsi or a major university and say, I have all of the answers to your problem with one product. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So we always started full service because every practice is just a smaller version of a Ford or a Pepsi. There's still a full service business who still needs a complete approach.
Yeah.
So that has definitely been something that's been core to us from the beginning that I think set us apart. Whereas I've seen, and I think you've seen it too, a lot of companies that were just website companies or just direct mail companies, they've expanded because they knew they had to remain competitive. Yeah. I love seeing, you guys, another full service agency. The more of that we have, the more doctors will come to expect it.
Yeah. I think that was when I started Studio 88. That was one of the questions. And one of the things when I kind of looked at the dental marketing landscape that I didn't like is I saw clients at the time. I was working with a practice management company. And so that's how I kind of got started, is I would help our clients. I'd kind of sit down and consult with them on marketing and go if I were you, here's what I would do. But I saw them they'd all have 4, 5, 6 different companies they were working with. And what happens is everything becomes fragmented. The yellow page guy does his own ad, and then the direct mail guy has his ad, and the website looks different, and you're just this isn't going to work.
There's zero brand consistency. The messaging is all over the place, and the doctors are just annoyed by it. Some of them still do this today. We still get calls, as I'm sure you do, from doctors who are working with 3 and 4 different companies, and they don't have time for it anymore.
Yeah. So, and I think the agency, I think it's kind of helping maybe dentistry level up a little bit too. Some of these guys, I was on the phone yesterday with a, $2.7 million practice, and honestly, he was pushing back on, the website. It was kind of I can probably go do a website. What if I did a website for $2,000 to $4,000, but then did this and this to compensate for it? And I straight up told him, I was I just need to tell you, you're a $2.7 million company. You're a multi-million-dollar company, and you're talking about a $4,000 website. This just doesn't make any sense to me at all. So I think the agency is
a good reminder. Yeah, they don't, because there's too many of their peers out there who are bargain hunters.
Yeah.
And I get it. I said it in the beginning. I'm married to a dentist. I know what their budgets look like. Dentists do not make nearly as much money as the patients think they do.
Yeah.
But I also know what my husband got in dental school, and the business education was 1 hour a week for 1 semester.
Right.
You can't teach anybody how to run a business that way. And so they're making decisions without like a real background in what it takes to make a business successful.
Yeah. 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 So I love the concept of an agency, because I think it's just elevating, like, hey, you need a team, you need a marketing team, behind you. And that's what that is. You guys have a statement on your website that I thought was interesting. It says the very best dental marketing starts with an exceptional culture. What does that mean when you say that?
So I have always kind of operated from a servant leadership mindset. And servant leadership, if you're familiar with the concept, is really about the owner of the business taking care of the team. Because if the team is happy, they're going to take really good care of your clients or your patients, the people who pay the bills, and ultimately the doctor wins or the business owner wins.
Yeah.
And the only way for you to take really good care of your patients and your team is to have a clearly defined culture, so that you don't have a bunch of rogue agents just doing what they think is best, but they're representing what is important to you as the business owner. So culture is really big for us. If you don't have that, everything else falls apart.
Yeah. Yeah. So then how do you guys play that out? Like, because culture is, it's intentional, right? So I'm sure you've got like some thoughts and plans there. How do you play that out with your team?
With my team, well, first we have a clearly defined culture statement.
Okay.
And we're very intentional about it. We make every hiring decision looking at the culture statement and saying, is this person a fit for our culture? Do they have the integrity that we're looking for? Are they able to provide open and honest communication? Whatever our statements are, will they be a fit that way? So recruiting with that in mind is the biggest start. If you don't know what kind of culture you want to have and you just hire people, then you can't hold them accountable to not living your culture, because you didn't hire people who embrace that culture in the first place.
Yeah.
It's very cyclical.
Yeah. Yeah. It looked on your guys' site though, it looks like you do some like fun stuff throughout the year. Is that intentional? Like, do you like every quarter you try to have something, or do you just go with the flow?
It is really intentional and also seat of the pants.
Yeah.
So like one of the things that we do, and I'm so sad that we missed it this year, this would have been our 15th year, we do an Easter egg hunt for everybody in the office.
Okay.
And the first year that I did it, I actually got the idea from a client of ours down in Florida, a dentist. And he would put like cash and Easter eggs, hide them around the office. His team would run around and get them. And so 15 years ago, I did this, and I'm thinking my team's going to think I am off my rocker. They are way too old to do an Easter egg hunt. They loved it like nothing I've ever seen. And it's actually one of those things when people interview with us, they bring it up and they ask about it because it's just so different.
Oh, that's fun.
So, we have some things that have become tradition like that. But it's also about, and I think you probably do a lot of the same thing. It's like taking the classic office birthday, and let's find a cool way to do it. Let's have a grilled cheese cook-off, and you create teams. Or we've done slider cook-offs. Or there's like a group of them will just go out to dinner once a month.
Yeah.
So to keep them connected, because agency life can be intense.
Yeah. You
gotta like the people you work with if you want them to do stuff for you.
Yeah, for sure. We try to be intentional on a quarterly basis, and like we do a summer social at our house in usually August, and of course you got a Christmas party in there. Mm-hmm. But then we try and throw in some other things here and there as well. But I agree, chemistry is such a huge part of it for us. Honestly, like when we hire, we have like our values that we kind of actually filter through, even through starting with recruiting. But at the end, it's like, character is first, like that's the number one thing. Chemistry is second, and then competency. Like, and then we almost kind of look at it in that order. Like, can we trust you? Are you going to get, because we're so mobile, and so remote that like, we have a rule, me and my business partner, is like, there is no babysitting. If I have to be your babysitter, like this is not a good fit. So, so we got to trust them, and then they got to be a good fit with the team. And then, and then they got to be good at what they do too. So. Well,
yeah, but too many people hire on skill first. And they have no idea the impact that it has when you have someone on the team that isn't in alignment with what your culture and your values are. And that's what's actually causing the problems, not whether someone's a good hygienist or a competent assistant.
I 100% agree. Another quote I saw from you, and I think I got this off your site, but it was marketing without data is like driving with your eyes closed. Given how fast I drive, that would be insane. which I love, but tell me about that.
So I have a really good radar detector because I do drive really fast. But data is everything to me. While I run a really creative right brain team, I'm the left brain. I have got to have the numbers to back up everything that we do. So whether it's like starting that original plan and developing, what are the strategies, that's going to be based in data. I got to see where your patients are coming from, what their average revenue spend is with you, how many people are you getting for particular types of procedures from a market area. I don't go off of anecdotal anymore. Like a great example, and you've probably seen this too, when I ask a practice, what percentage of your patients come from referral, which tells me a lot about new patient experience and culture. Yeah. The answer I almost always get is what I call the ego answer. I get 50, 60%, almost all of our patients. It's the only thing I hear.
Right.
And then we go in and we look at the data, and it's complete baloney.
Yeah.
It's maybe 25 to 30% at best.
Yeah.
Now, some of that is doctors and teams need to do a much better job of tracking where the patients are coming from. But if you're looking at it subjectively, you're never going to be able to do the right thing because you're bringing your bias to that strategy. And numbers don't lie. They're just numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. How do you quantify brand in that? And just even like brand awareness type campaigns?
So that's one I would love to tell you that I can directly quantify. It's not, brand isn't a lead generation strategy. I can measure any lead generation out there.
Yeah.
Some of it does have to be gut instinct. Nobody is going to be able to say, I got this many patients because of my logo. Yeah. You can say how many you got from your signage, but brand is a feeling. And I think it's reflected though in like your reviews and number of patients that commit to recare with you. So there's signals as to the quality of brand, but it's not quite as quantifiable.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's interesting, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, but I think, moving into this post-COVID kind of environment, I just wonder if, running, like, let's just say running digital ads right now in the next 90 to 180 days, 3 to 6 months, you're running Google, you're running Facebook. I personally think it's a huge brand awareness market share opportunity to be the practice to step up and just be visible and to communicate. I'm also on the other side going, I think that direct response kind of metric that's typically associated with those could actually go down. And even thinking long-term, like of a bear market, like if we get into some like a bear market recession, we're so used to some of these metrics being bull market, direct response, all that, where we could, like, would we miss the point if we go, oh, that's not working because it's less? Do you know what I mean? Even though I think there's actually more of a brand share opportunity.
So 19 years of experience, we did get into, just from an agency side, we did get into it for a while. When we got into the last recession, I was just looking at hard numbers. What has gotten me the exact number of leads that I needed? Let's cut out the things that didn't. And we realized within a couple of years, the impact it had on brand awareness and familiarity with our name. So I think brand becomes even more important. Yeah. You do not want to let go of that just to cut budget, because brand is that thing that continually defines you. Yeah. That's that unspoken reputation. I think that's actually paramount right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. We've got a bunch of people on watching. Michael Arias is on, Liz Nyes, Scott Smith, Sandy Perdue is watching, Talia Da. So a bunch of people, if you guys have questions for Xana, drop them in the comments. I've got them coming up right here. I'll make sure I get them her way. Let me ask you about your role in the company, because I'm always fascinated by CEOs and owners, because that role, I could ask 10 CEOs what their role involves, and I'm going to get 10 different things. So tell me a little bit about your kind of day-to-day, week-to-week, and what you oversee and are involved in.
It's really shifted over the years, to be honest. Yeah. I used to be hands-on rainmaker, working directly with clients, setting strategies. And I work really closely with a phenomenal business coach. And one of the things he convinced me is that I needed to let go of the direct day-to-day client management, which was one of the hardest things I ever had to do because I adore my clients.
Yeah.
They're like personal friends. But what it did, what I learned over time, is it really freed me up to do much bigger picture thinking, to get really deep into teaching my team leadership and providing really high level strategy for our clients, like big DSOs that come to us, that kind of thing. So my day to day is really like top level. It isn't going out and meeting with a client individually. It's thought leadership in lectures. It's meeting with my leadership team and making sure that the team they're managing is getting the best possible results. It's not really exciting. It's seriously stuff I can do from my home office. I never have to see another person, but I love it at this point. It's really shifted. I'm curious how yours has shifted.
Yeah, no, I mean, same way. I think, in the beginning, I was doing all the sales, all the project management, all the client work. The big, probably first shift was getting a project manager in to just start handling the projects and overseeing them. I remember how big of a deal that was. Now we have a few, and they honestly, they're better. Sometimes clients are like, well, do we get to work with you directly? And I'm like, listen, my project manager is so much better at this now than I am. You don't want me managing your project. So yeah, and then even then, I think our next transition was even getting like kind of building a marketing team in place. And now the sales process, I'm still involved in a lot of sales, but we've brought somebody on. We're starting to transition that. And again, like you go through that, like it's hard, it's funky. It's like, but I think, we'll look back a year from now and go, that was a really good decision. So
I kind of equate it to, and honestly, it can have to do with like age of kids. So my kids are grown, they're out of the house. It was a hard transition, letting them leave and not seeing them come back every single summer and being able to let them make independent decisions. It killed me. They were my kids. That was my number one job at home, was to be their mom, to make them strong, independent adults. And then I did my job, and darn it, I was out of a job.
Yeah.
And your kids are what do you have, teenagers right now?
14 and 10.
Okay. So you're kind of still in that transition of raising them and your team being your kids.
Yeah.
So that you can truly let them go. But it's kind of cool on the other side. I've heard parents say that before, that once your kids are out of the house, it's like a whole new life starts over for you again. And I've seen the same thing in my company.
Yeah.
So it's a transition, but it's totally worth it.
How did you, like those ceilings or those transitions, like how did you kind of break through those? Was it just like the advice of your coach? Did you start to realize, like, were you just pulled in too many directions? Was it a loss of passion in those areas? Like, what were those indicators?
It was probably, we were having team conflict for a while, and he's not the first coach I've worked with. I knew it was a signal that it was time for me to just get back in another coaching relationship. But he kept beating the drum. Anybody who knows me, it takes a little while for a brand new idea to really sink in and for me to embrace it. And sometimes I have to learn the lesson once or twice before I go, oh, darn it, they were right in the first place if I just listened.
Yeah.
So the signals for me were that I was pulled in a lot of directions and nothing was meeting my standards. My team will tell you I have impossibly high standards. I'm just that kind of person. And when nobody was meeting my standards, that wasn't on them. That was on me, because I wasn't able to give the things that needed the attention, all that time that they needed.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your leadership team. Like, who's on that? Not like names, but like what positions are there, and how often are you guys meeting? What's that structure look like?
Well, I have 3 on my leadership team. I have my chief operating officer, who is Lori, and she has literally been with me for 18 of my 19 years. Okay. She was actually a graphic designer, and she grew into a creative director and then took on this role. And I'm just incredibly lucky. She was born for it. And then I have a vice president of sales and marketing. Okay. And then I have a director of web services that, will eventually move him up into a VP level. But all three of them operate on our leadership team. We meet every single week, and we have really specific goals that we're working towards, holds everybody accountable. But I also get to just completely trust them to do what they need to do with their teams because they know what we're all trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
That was a big part of it too, is just making the financial commitment to have non-revenue producing people.
Right.
But it's leverage. It just, everything grows exponentially once you don't have to be the one doing the stuff every day.
Yeah. No, I love that. We're getting close to that. I think for me, I see that here in the distance. Like I need to kind of officially, formally establish a leadership team and move forward. There is kind of a little bit of a makeshift one, but it's, not clear even to the rest of the team. So, all right. So your husband is a dentist. Obviously you kind of launched into that because of that. It launched into this. What does that bring any challenges to the table? Like you guys both being in the same profession?
It was good in the beginning because I could ask a million questions. Now I'm dangerous enough. I mean, you don't want to put a drill in my hand, but I can diagnose stuff over the phone just like he does. The challenges after a while. Okay, so the biggest challenge, if I'm being really honest, because he's my husband, he doesn't listen to me. I can tell. I can tell him what marketing things he needs to do. If he were any other client, I could really have it out with him and have to come to Jesus and say, listen, you're only hurting yourself by doing this thing.
Yeah.
But he's my husband. So we don't really listen to our spouses the way that we're supposed to.
Yeah.
And after a while, I hit a point where I handed him off to some of my other account team because I should not have been running his account.
That's brilliant. That's amazing. Michael Arias actually dropped a question in here. He said, have you ever received horrible advice from a coach? And if so, when and how did you realize it was horrible, bad advice?
Wow. Yeah, I did get one really bad piece of advice from one of my coaches. One was the importance of celebrating our account team and hitting really big milestones that they had, but not at the same time finding equivalent types of celebrations for other members of my team. So the account team, there's pretty clear metrics. Either they made numbers or they didn't.
Right.
Either they kept the right number of clients or they didn't. And production was harder to do that with. And we definitely hit a point where they kind of felt a little neglected. And once we found out about it, it was eye-opening, and it's really shifted how we communicate with them. I'm sure there's a lot of pieces of bad advice out there, but sometimes you just have to learn them the hard way. Yeah,
no, that's interesting because it's easy to quantify, especially like sales and all that stuff, right? And things that produce revenue. It's hard to quantify good creative,
Right.
How do you guys have you compensated for that, or how do you give creatives the recognition?
So everybody on our team actually works on performance incentives, which is one of these things my coach had me do.
Okay.
And so what it does is we look for any possible thing that somebody is doing that they can improve. Because I'm a big believer in constant, never-ending improvement.
Yeah.
So if it's from a creative perspective, it's client satisfaction on a piece of work, or what is the response that we got? Was this designed with the right kind of conversion theories in mind? And anything that we can measure, they have certain metrics that they hit and they get a nice reward for it. But the benefit is actually to our clients, because everything that we set them up to do is to get a better product for the end user. But it's like a win-win-win. It takes some management, but honestly, I love that we did it.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's cool. You guys, okay, so interesting story here. You guys recently just started a brewery.
Yes.
Like recently, it's right before COVID. Tell us about that.
So this has been my husband's baby for a long time. He and his best friend, and his best friend's a fourth grade school teacher. So they always did this home brew project in my basement every weekend. There's muddy dogs and sticky beer everywhere as they're doing their home brewing. And people really started to love their beer because their problem was, frankly, they were making more beer than they could personally drink. So they're giving it away to all their friends. And the demand was there. And they said, okay, we're going to make a leap. And I'm like, you're bananas. You have a full-time company with your dental practice. But I believe in people chasing their dreams. So it took them about a year of construction. Construction, as I'm sure you've experienced, is always twice as long and twice as much money. So the whole thing opened significantly later than planned. And we ended up opening literally 5 days before Pennsylvania got completely shut down from the pandemic.
Man, that's so crazy.
It was brutal.
Did you guys, you probably saw that coming though, right? Like you open and you're like, we don't know how long this is going to be open.
No, actually, literally the weekend before that week, my husband's father passed away after a long illness. Wow. And so during his grand opening, first couple of days, we had to leave, go for the funeral. And at the time, people were like kind of kiddingly go, oh, we got to bump elbows and can't actually give each other a hug. Nobody saw this train coming. And on the way home from that service, I hear a broadcast that talks about, it's from the CDC saying you can expect major interruptions to our economy. And I said, okay, we've got to figure out how to pivot because I can see restaurants getting shut down. And he tells me I'm bananas. And I go into strategy mode and just start planning everything. Said, you don't have online takeout, you don't have delivery service set up. And I start mapping out a plan and I go in and I talk to he and his partner the next day and they're looking at me like I have 3 heads. And so I went around them. I went to the guy who manages the point of sale system and said, we're going to get this set up so that 3 days later, once they actually got shut down, we were ready to roll literally with 1 day's notice.
Wow.
And all the other restaurants in the area that didn't have that set up were weeks and weeks out from even being able to get access to someone coming to train them on how to set up the system. So we kind of didn't see it coming, but I equate it to like the rumbling of an avalanche.
Yeah.
You hear that little noise in the background and you're like, uh-oh. And then all of a sudden everybody's under the snow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was about all we had.
So then obviously, you don't have like month to month data to compare this, like we're down X%. So what did month 1, what did month 2 look like? Obviously it was tough, but you're still in it.
Month 1, their opening weekend, they did like 50,000.
Oh my gosh.
First of all, it's a great brand. It's a lot of fun.
Okay.
And it was just a pent-up demand in our community. Somehow we were the only university town in central Pennsylvania that didn't have a brewery.
Wow.
Don't ask me how. The gods were looking out for us. So they had some great starting revenue, but because there was so much like marketing buildup that we'd done for this grand opening, everybody was aware of the brewery and they really wanted to make sure that it stayed open. So the community support has been insane. And
that's so cool.
They have more than covered their costs. He doesn't need to make money. He's got his practice. I've got my business.
Yeah.
But the sheer fact that they were able to keep at least half their team employed at the brewery and we open up next Friday. The restrictions come off.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's a Jackass Brewing Company, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I know. Crazy name.
No, it sounds fun for sure. So yeah. So anybody out there watching, if you guys want to be supportive, can they order online? It probably can't get shipped out of state though, can it?
You can't ship beer, but there's merchandise online, and it's totally worth coming out to if you ever feel like taking a trip. Yeah.
That's awesome. I know he recently celebrated a birthday and you posted it on social. And one of the things that caught my eye was you said something along the lines of clean living means the best things never change or something like that. What does that mean to you guys? Is that more of kind of a diet? Is that more of just like a conscious type lifestyle?
That's just who he is. Ever since I met him, he's like a 7-time Ironman finisher, triathlete. He does a lot of marathons, a little bit less right now with running 2 businesses. But he has always been a really conscious consumer of his food and his exercise. He is 55 years old and he's got barely any gray in his hair. I know people in their early 40s who don't come close to looking as young as he does.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Does that affect you too? Or are you just like, whatever, all the rules are up, I just do whatever I want?
I'm a little more in the whatever. Like I like my sugar. I like a nice martini at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But considering I turned 50 last year, it's a real wake-up call to just make sure you're taking care of yourself. So I'm a lot more conscious of what I eat too.
Yeah. My family, we've got some food allergies in the family. So it's made us like very conscious about what we eat. And so it's just been an interesting conversation. And honestly, when you start getting in that world, you can get pretty deep in it pretty fast for sure.
Well, it's hard to escape within the world of dentistry anyway. I mean, don't you find that this is a health industry, so you're sort of hyper aware of everything health related that happens in your life. And I mean, dentistry is the perfect example of just whatever happens in your body starts in your mouth. Yeah. Whether it's food or disease or anything else.
Yeah. Had a question here. Sarah Varney's online. Hey, Sarah. Joanna Scott, my wife, actually is on and asks. She says, "Are you a simplifier or a multiplier?" Are you familiar with that kind of leadership conversation?
Elaborate.
Yeah, it's Dan Sullivan with Strategic Coach, and I think it's not nothing new, but her and I have been having this conversation lately because a friend of ours said there's leaders, there's simplifiers and multipliers, and obviously I think it's pretty self-explanatory. But how would you describe yourself?
Gosh, can I say both?
Sure. In what ways?
So I'm a really systems driven person. So for me, simplifying everything that we do makes it more repeatable, better results, more predictable. So there's that, but I'm a multiplier in that I love to leverage the talents of the people that I have. And so if I can constantly keep surrounding myself with more and more and more of the right thing, I get exponentially bigger and better results. Not having read the theory, that's my interpretation.
Yeah.
Which one are you?
I'd probably lean towards a simplifier, and I think like I can be a multiplier for sure. Her and I were talking about this, but I think the thing that probably gives me most energy, and my team jokes with me because they're like, I've got to put everything in its box. I've got to draw it up on a whiteboard and there's boxes and there's arrows and this moves here. And because for me, if I can make it simple and clean, then we can all lead and function really well. So I almost have to simplify first, and then I can go multiply and then bring that back in and simplify. And so I don't know, it's kind of a process.
I agree. It's completely cyclical.
Yeah.
I think any leader should probably operate from both mindsets.
Yeah. But you made that comment earlier, which was interesting because I'm this way too, where 2 of the people on the team I work with, probably somewhat the closest, are multipliers. And sometimes it's just like, there's all this like stuff. And I'm like, hold on, I got to get my head around this first. Like I need 48 hours. Can I have that? Can we do that? And then and so for me, it's a little bit of a challenge of not slowing them down and giving them freedom, but also then figuring out how I can simplify it and get my head around it.
Okay. Well, with that perspective, I'm probably more on the multiplier side, only because and this always sounds so egotistical, but when people say this, I'm a visionary personality. Yeah. Like I can always instantly see to the end of what something needs to be. And then I work backwards in all the steps very strategically to say, okay, now we got to do this to get there. But I know all of the steps. And sometimes my team will tell you, I can want to start tackling all the steps all at once. Okay. Because I want to get to the end so much faster.
Yeah.
And they will rein me in.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, so with dental practices reopening, has Pennsylvania given the clear yet or no?
It is county by county.
Okay.
Poor Philly is still in the red. They're not allowed to do much of anything but emergencies.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys obviously work with clients all over the country. So as practices have started to reopening, what's been some of your advice? What's been some of your messaging to your clients?
So my big advice is probably multi-pronged, but look, I lived through the last recession. I learned a lot of lessons from that one. And the biggest takeaway that I would have for everybody who's watching is consumer behavior is going to shift. This is such a monumental, life-altering event that the idea that we're all just going to go back to normal is baloney. Okay. So you have to get your head around what that new normal, not even new normal, how much it's going to continue to shift. I mean, a great example for me is you always want to think about, and I think I mentioned this in my podcast with Michael, what's the one thing that could completely upend your business, that could just literally shut you down? Yeah. And a great example I remember hearing is this move towards driverless cars. An unintended consequence is going to be there'll be less accidents and we're going to have less organ donation. So how do we get on top of that before it's a problem? So thinking that way within what's happened right here, and I don't have the answer for it, but just knowing that, be aware there will be a gigantic shift in consumer behavior and look for those signals early to get ahead of it, or you're going to get caught short.
Do you think there's any, because there's definitely some thought going around, and I've heard a couple of people say, hey, you need to be, like, this could be worst case scenario, but you need to think this through of being prepared to have a hygiene-less practice, like doctor-only practice. Do you think there's any validity to that?
I can't imagine not having hygiene in a practice.
Yeah.
But it's going to be that way for probably 3-6 months at least. I mean, I know we went to yellow and we're able to start seeing patients, but hygienists can only do old-fashioned scraping prophies for people with bad perio. They can't do traditional hygiene. Yeah. So what does that do to a practice? And it's recurring revenue of patients coming back in, and hygiene being the opportunity to diagnose new treatment that keeps your restorative part of the practice going. It's going to completely change the new patient model if that's what we've got. And even if it's just the next 3 to 6 months, think about the long-term impact of not being able to see enough of those patients to get the restorative work that you need.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think some of it's probably just a worst case scenario planning, even in the thought of like, okay, if we have a resurgence and we go through a shutdown again, but it becomes a little bit more mandated where it's like, hey, we're going to pause on hygiene for, 3 to 6 months. Like, doctors can see emergencies, and like, how would your practice look, being just doctor based, being emergency based, probably look more like a specialist type practice. It could be interesting. I don't know.
See, I was kind of thinking the opposite. I'm thinking consumers are going to be so concerned about too much contact that the more of a practice where a doctor has multiple specialties that they can do restorative and place implants and do cosmetics and do TMJ, that you don't have to send them out to multiple other offices. Yeah. They're going to be more comfortable because there's one location, one set of people that they know whether they're potentially contaminated or not. And I know that that's not counting hygiene in there, but I feel like those practices are probably really going to have an advantage moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's very true. When you say things not getting back to normal, let's say we kind of get past COVID here for like in June, July, and things start to go back to normal. Are you predicting more of a long-term economic effect, and how long do you see that lasting?
I can't imagine that you wouldn't have a long-term economic effect.
Yeah.
Just telling people you don't have to pay your rent for 2 months, the trickle down to what that does to the landlord and who the landlord can afford to pay. And we are just starting to see the cusp of what is going to happen economically.
Yeah.
So in a way, I do also feel like dentistry is going to have more value. There have been people literally screaming for, I need to be able to get to the dentist. So maybe there'll be more gratitude and appreciation for things that they used to take for granted, like canceling appointments or, oh, it's just a cleaning.
Yeah.
I would love to see that attitude shift with consumers.
Yeah. No, I think it's like right now, currently, it's a really interesting time. I feel like consumer confidence is pretty high. And there's almost like this, I don't know if it's like a false like peak or high or what, but like, I mean, we had Memorial Day, you know, we went over to Indiana to some families, you know, lake house, and people want to go out, they want to spend money, they want to like go to dinner, they want to do a little retail shopping. Like we just want to like do these things and get back to normal. And, you know, the stock market's up almost 1,000 points this week. Like, you know, so all this is happening. At the same time, I read this article that most of the mortgage companies and landlords that delayed rent or mortgage payments for 2 to 3 months, like that's going to end here in June. Mm-hmm. And a bunch of states put freezes on evictions through June. So now all of a sudden, then we got everybody having to, so people have kind of had this money, right? This unemployment, no mortgage, consumer optimism is so high, but yet I'm like, July, we're going back to mortgage payments.
Right.
And how does all of a sudden it just like just comes to a halt, you know?
I don't know. I'm curious to see how they react, but there's enough people that are just going to lose their jobs permanently because of this.
Yeah. That
it'll impact how many people can come into the dentist, how important insurance is. It's going to be interesting. Yeah. It took a long time to come out of the last recession. I mean, honestly, I look at our numbers. I could watch it happening, like literally how it spread from the East Coast and the West Coast, and it sort of spread inward. And then the recovery kind of did the exact same thing. So depending on concentration of, the virus, there could be other areas that take significantly longer to come back. Yeah. I think it's going to be a good 2 years plus before it feels stable.
Yeah. I think I tend to agree with you. Looking back on the last recession, how did that affect you guys? And just even the last recession technically wasn't dental kind of focused. And I worked in a practice management company then, and my take on it was we kind of came out of that. It was like dentistry took a hit, but dentistry's always kind of been fairly recession proof, like people would say. Was that your experience with that, or was it harder than that?
Well, we had a lot of clients. Remember, we kind of started with this big niche in the cosmetic dentistry world. Okay. When the recession hit, that was, rug pulled out from under them. Yeah. It was dramatic. And the doctors, and we would talk to them, the ones who absolutely refused to pivot ended up going out of business. I know a number of practices that had stopped seeing hygiene because they were such specialists in treating cosmetics or TMJ. And I said, you've got to get back into full restorative patient care and hygiene, and they refused to because they were so fixed on, this is the way I want to run my business. Like, that's great, but your consumer doesn't want your business model. Yeah. So I think there's going to be some of that shift economically about how people are going to react to, how they spend their money on dentistry. Yeah. No, that's interesting. Now that you say that, I totally remember that. The cosmetic practices back then took the biggest hit for sure. It was almost like dentistry wasn't a bubble back then, but if we had a bubble within dentistry, it was the cosmetic practices. Right. Did you see any bubbles inside of dentistry before COVID hit that you think are more susceptible? No, honestly, great question. I don't off the top of my head. I don't see any bubbles. Some of the fee-for-service practices, they're probably going to struggle a little bit more. But I don't know. Do you see any bubbles? I think I kind of felt like this beforehand. There was such a crazy expansion mentality in dentistry that it was so opportunistic there the last 3 years. And people wanting the second practice, third practice, and trying to get to 10 or so whatever magic number to flip and sell. And and I think those guys that maybe were in the middle of that were probably over leveraged on 7 locations or whatever that was. I think this is probably a really tough time. And I could see the bigger DSOs actually over the next 12, 18 months acquiring a lot of small, mid-sized groups that just don't have the cash. Actually, that's a really good point. I could definitely see a larger move towards DSOs, but it might also strengthen all the small private practices to really want to round up together and protect themselves from, having to move in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. What are your predictions for dental marketing over the next 30, 60, 90 days, like client wise? Like what are you telling them? What are the opportunities?
People have to get back into the mindset of lead generation, because dentistry has what I've always seen is roughly about a 3-month churn from the time that somebody sees your marketing, gets to the point that they're ready to take action, comes in, gets an exam, starts to do the restorative work where you really start to see some revenue. And we have put a complete 3-month halt on that. Yeah. So all of those 3 months of consecutive buildup that you would have seen are gone, and you're going to have this giant gap in new patients and what they would have been contributing had we been able to bring them in the past 3 months. So lead generation is going to have to be big over the next 90 days. I see doctors putting a lot more emphasis on knowing the return on investment for what they're doing, because they are going to have to make some shifts, and they're probably going to want to make some good informed decisions. So I believe they're going to be looking a lot closer and tighter at what's working and what's not, and maybe hold their teams a little more accountable too, to help them get more of the results that they deserve from the marketing they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. You guys are putting together, you've put together some packages for this for your clients and just even the profession, your comeback packages, which I love the name, by the way. Little inside joke there, but tell us about your comeback packages and really how you're trying to position. Because I'm assuming, are these packages for your clients, or are they like existing clients, or for new clients to kind of jump in and do some things?
A little bit of both, honestly. Because I've been doing this for 20 years, because I lived through the last recession, we were crazy prepared for this one. I'm a little bit of a doomsday prepper in that way.
Okay.
So we did not have to lay people off or do anything else. And yet I'm watching all of our clients really taking a beating. Yeah. And so for us, we wanted to be able to kind of give a cushion to people to get them back on their feet. So what we're doing is we have like 2 different programs that are really lead generation driven, that are going to help doctors make the phone ring, get those new patients in, kind of restart that 90-day churn on starting to see the revenue. And because we know it's going to take a good 90 days for anything that happens tomorrow, it's going to be till end of the summer before you really start to see the impact. So for that, we're just deferring all billing on anything that we're doing for them, for anybody in these packages, for the next 90 days. Wow. So kind of letting them do the catch up. We're going to bear that responsibility for them so they can get back on their feet.
That's amazing. Gosh, super generous. Cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. Before I let you go here and we wrap up, couple personal questions. What's something you're super proud of about yourself during this break?
Wow. Okay, so I'm super proud of the fact that I was able to be vulnerable with my team. This is just as scary for business owners as it is for the employees who are wondering, am I going to have a job? Yeah. And I definitely had a moment in the first week, if you ever talk to some of my team members in the future, where I might not have been at my best, and they got to see my concern and my fear, and let's just say it culminated in a hangover the next day. But by being that level of vulnerable with them, it also led us to being really transparent with them on the impact it was having on the company and on our clients, and that created trust that it was a level we never had before. So I'm kind of proud of in a backwards way.
No, I totally relate to that. I think that especially those first like 2 to 3 weeks were just, and I think some of it was the balance, right, of transparency and vulnerability versus like, I don't want to freak anybody out. I don't want them going scared about their jobs. But yet also they're thinking it. They're like, am I going to have a job next week? So you might as well talk about it, you know?
Exactly. They think you're just putting on a false front otherwise.
Yeah.
So if you're not really honest with them and let them see that, boss is allowed to have emotions, it's okay. You don't have to be brave 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Then it kind of lets their guard down and they're like, okay, I trust what you're telling me. And it kind of works for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. This Friday night, long week, you're relaxing. What are you eating? What are you drinking?
Cheese. So you would think my husband having a brewery that I could just go in and tell the chef to make me whatever the heck he wants to make, which is fun. But more often than not, he's working late at the brewery. So it's like cheese and crackers and a glass of wine, which is a terrible, terrible Friday night dinner.
Oh man, that's awesome.
If I'm cooking for one, I'm not going to cook.
Yeah. No, that's fair. It's totally fair. All right. It looks like one of your team members is online too. Is it Janya?
Xana. Yes.
Xana, yeah. So she says, Xana has handled things with immediacy, transparency, and grace. It makes me proud to say I work for a GPM.
So, what a sweetheart. Thanks, Xana.
Awesome. All right. Before I let you go, if people want to connect with you online, where's the best spot?
Probably the easiest thing, just go to our website, goldenproportions.com, and we have live web chat, which is monitored almost all the time, except for the 2 a.m. chats that seem to come in, which just blow my mind, the number of doctors who are like expecting there's going to be someone on the other end to chat at 2 a.m.
Nice, yeah.
Even if it was 11 on the West Coast. So that's probably the easiest to get a hold of us, and one of our team members will be on there to help you.
Cool, awesome. Well, hey, look, I appreciate you jumping on so much. I know probably a little unorthodox, marketing companies coming together and talking, through this time. But I think it's important for the profession. I know you share a lot of similar values. Like, we're not just in this to build a business and make money. This is about elevating the profession. This is about doing right by it. I know for me, when I got into it, it was because dental marketing on the whole was so bad that it was like, look, we deserve better than this. Dentistry deserves a better story. And I know you feel the same way. So, I appreciate you jumping on.
I like meeting with people who have very similar values. So I'm glad we had a chance to get to know each other better.
Yeah. We'll see each other at a conference soon and give you a hug, have a drink, all those things.
Sounds good.
So,
awesome.
All right, thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks for having me.